Right now, two of America's global adversaries get closer by the moment.
I thank you for the warm welcome extended to our entire delegation. Our close communication reflects the strategic nature of Russia-China relations, which are at an unprecedentedly high level.
China's Xi Jinping called Russia's Vladimir Putin his old friend moments ago at today's summit. The headline event of Putin's four-day visit will be a massive military parade in China's capital that's happening in the coming hours. Also traveling to Beijing, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, along with a total of 26 foreign heads of state. It will be only the 10th time Kim has left his country since taking power. Joining me now to discuss is CNN correspondent Mark Stewart in Beijing. Mark, we're talking about Putin here, Xi, Kim, all together. Is this rare, or have these powers been coming together more recently, more often?
This is rare. This may be the first time, if our history is correct, that we will see all three of these leaders perhaps standing together in front of Tiananmen Square. This is an event that certainly is going to be rich in optics, and really it's the symbolism that is going to be the story. To see two established nuclear powers, being China and Russia, the leaders of these two nations, and then an ambitious nuclear nation, North Korea, hoping to develop its nuclear program further. To see these three together, these images are going to reverberate around the world. And it really is happening at a time when China in particular is seeking validation as it really tries to establish itself as the leader of what is often described as a new world order, something to counter the West, to counter these traditional alliances such as NATO. That's the big theme that certainly is going to be projected. It's also a way to boost the morale and show some excitement for the Chinese population as well. There's been a lot of curiosity, not only about these photo ops, but also one-on-one meetings. It is very likely that we will see Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un have some kind of conversation. After all, the North Korean leader did travel here by train, which has a whole history within itself. So that's a meeting that we are looking to potentially take place. And then earlier today, here in Beijing, we saw Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping meet in the iconic Great Hall of the People. This has been a relationship, a no-limits relationship, as it's often described. And once again today, that kinship was very strong. Keep in mind that China has not condemned Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. China continues to be Russia's #1 customer of oil. So this relationship is very strong, as we heard from those remarks by Vladimir Putin. So, Audie, looking forward, I think it's not going to be a question of seeing agreements or substantial decisions made. It's the fact that we are going to see all of these leaders together. It's the symbolism, which really is going to be the big story here.
It's CNN correspondent Mark Stewart in Beijing with some great context there. Thank you, Mark. I want to keep the conversation going and talk about what this means for the U.S. in this new world order in the age of Trump. Joining me now in the group chat, Isaac Dovere, CNN senior reporter, Jonah Goldberg, CNN political commentator and editor-in-chief of The Dispatch, and Maria Cardona, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist. Another thing that a lot of these countries have in common, when you look at Myanmar, Iran, India, the other people who are there, is sanctions. They're all people who are dealing with pretty tough sanctions by the U.S. and are looking for alternate patrons, so to speak. Jonah, now that we are fully living in the America First, whatever the Trump foreign policy doctrine is, what does it mean in the face of a new axis?
Yeah, so I mean, I was in India in last fall and met with a lot of government officials and think tankers and all that kind of stuff. And it was an interesting experience. And one of the things I came away with is, first of all, being very pro-India as a future strategic ally. I also don't think India is permanently going to be like aligned with China and Russia.
But taking a photo, Modi, in the limo with Putin is clearly trying to send a message.
Oh, it's a diplomatic black eye for America. It's disastrous for America, and there is You know, in 1949, when China went communist, the debate in foreign policy circles for more than a decade was who lost China. And you could have a debate here about who lost India, which would be, I think, disastrous for us, but also probably disastrous for India.
Yeah, but we know that the U.S. is concerned a bit about this. Here's Trump advisor Peter Navarro talking about India in the context of what you were talking about. And just for context, India is facing levies, I think, of 50% in terms of tariffs by the U.S. for accepting Russian oil. Here's what Navarro had to say.
It's time for Modi to step up. I have great respect for Modi. I love the Indian people. It was a shame to see Modi getting in bed as the leader of the biggest democracy in the world with the two biggest authoritarian dictators in the world, in Putin and Xi Jinping. That doesn't make any sense.
Except for it does make sense when you look at how the United States is treating what could potentially be and has been our allies. I remember in the 90s when India was one of the big emerging markets for exactly the reasons that you just stated, Jonah. And so I think this is bigger than just India. This is demonstrating the way that Trump has treated our allies and has treated countries in the West is giving China an opening, because people cannot, our allies around the world on a global scale, cannot trust the United States anymore to be a good partner, to be somebody that they can count on. You have China investing billions in Africa, investing billions in Latin America.
Which they've done for a long time, but you're
have.
pointing out it's in the vacuum
Yes.
that the U.S. is leaving.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And even in things like moving away, taking away our investments in climate, for example, and green energy, this is going to be a market that is currently huge for China, and they're going to be able to continue to move into those areas.
I was interested in something Mark said, which is he talked about the relationship between China and Russia, like having no limits, and using that term, no limits, which is comparing that in my mind to Trump's relationship even with Europe, which is definitely like limits, conditions, fine print, like it's a very different offer.
But also a very different clock on everything, right? Trump is often thinking at most by his 2-week standard, right? Russia and China don't think about things in that way, and their government systems allow them to not think of things in that way. But look, I'm thinking, sitting here this morning about 10 years ago in 2015, I was in India myself with Barack Obama when he went there at the beginning of 2015. And the big thing that he was doing on that trip was trying to steer India into the Paris Climate Accords. And the reason why he was trying to do that was not just to get India there, but to put pressure on China so that they would join. That was for a climate, international climate policy agreement that, whether you think it was perfect or not, and definitely was not perfect, but there are a lot of questions that have been raised about it, even by people who are for it, was thinking about the world order in a very different way than what Donald Trump is doing here. And I think it's important we can forget in America how much all around the world they are watching what happens in our political process here in capitals, and all of these world leaders are looking at this and thinking, what do they do now?
One thing that, I mean, this is like the third time I've talked about this in 24 hours, and the one thing that keeps falling out of it is the personalist nature of Donald Trump's understanding of geopolitics. He tried to lean very heavily on Modi, who, look, is a technocrat, but he's also a populist, you know, not autocrat, but he's a populist leader too. And he tried to lean on Modi on the issue of how to spin Trump's intervention on the India-Pakistan conflict.
Right, saying that he had solved it and created a...
Imagine Modi saying, here's, you know, President Trump, here's how you need to talk about the Epstein files. I mean, they're like, it is such an unbelievably sensitive, complicated issue for the culturally, politically. I'm not saying India is always right about it, but Trump wants a Nobel Prize.
Right, and that's the core of it. He wants India to nominate him for the Nobel Prize for that, but that's not in Modi's interest necessarily.
I don't think that's...
Modi cannot be seen as giving in to that kind of pressure. Pakistan played it pretty smart because they could, and now it's, I don't know.
Make him happy.
Well, I'm glad you guys are talking about this, because I think that these are the kinds of moments that history you can like look back on and wonder. We're talking about India in part because it's like, how do we treat our friends? How do we treat our enemies, et cetera?